Hola, ¿cómo están? Hoy tenemos el tema de pronombres de objeto directo, que son direct object pronouns. This topic you saw in Spanish 111, or you may have possibly seen in a class before Spanish 111 if you did not take that at Longwood. So this is not like in the mind tap per se, but it is important for our next topic. And so I do want to take a few minutes to talk about it and to go over it with you. So I'd recommend watching this video before you jump into the main grammar topic, which is the indirect and double object pronouns. Okay, entonces. And the other thing is this doesn't really have page numbers that correspond. I believe it might be in chapter 7 or 8 of Plazas if you want to go back and review that way as well. But again, this is just setting us up to be able to be successful with the next couple of grammar topics. Entonces, el sujeto y el objeto. So I just want to go over subject and object of the sentence. What does this mean? This is going to be really important for this grammar lecture and also the next one, okay? And the next one is going to be what you have mind tap on. So really important that we understand these two terms. El sujeto hace la acción del verbo, okay? El sujeto hace la acción, el objeto recibe la acción del verbo. When we talk about the action of the verb, okay, the subject is doing the action, the object receives the action. Entonces, en mis ejemplos, Bob Esponja lee el libro. Bob Esponja, that's my subject, right? He is doing the action. He's reading, so he's my subject. Lee el libro. What's he reading? My object, the book. Ana come la manzana. Ana is my subject here because she's the one who's eating, right? La manzana, the apple, is my object because that's what's receiving that direct action of the verb to eat. Okay, o comer. Ana come la manzana. Okay, entonces, sujeto y objeto. Okay, sujeto. La persona o cosa que hace la acción. So we just said that the person, or it could be a thing that does the action of the verb, okay? ¿Qué son los pronombres de sujeto? So we've talked about, and you guys talked about in Spanish 111, what are subject pronouns, which are just how we refer to people, right? Tenemos, por ejemplo, yo, tú, usted, él, ella, nosotros, vosotros, ustedes, ellos, ellas. We also have some that we didn't probably talk about in 111, like vos, which is sort of another way to say tú, and it's used in places like Argentina and Chile, okay, among other countries. So we have a lot of different ways to refer to other people without using their names, right? Y estos son en español, ¿no? Los pronombres de sujeto. So we've already seen subject pronouns, and we know what those are already. Okay, so that would be, for example, I threw the ball, yo tiré la pelota, you carry the books, tú llevas los libros, o they make dinner, ellos hacen la cena. In all of these examples, my blue part, my subject, is the person who's doing the action, okay? El objeto es la cosa o la persona que recibe la acción del verbo, right? So this is the thing, or could be a person who's receiving the action of the verb, okay? ¿Cómo identificamos el objeto directo? So how do we identify our direct object? First step is that you need to identify your subject and your verb, okay? Identificar el sujeto y el verbo. Second step, ask who or what, okay? Preguntar qué o quién. Por ejemplo, los estudiantes usan celulares. That's my example there. Los estudiantes usan celulares. Entonces, ¿quién es mi sujeto? Who's my subject? Okay? And what's my verb in this sentence? So our subject, we're going to see, okay, is los estudiantes. They're the ones doing the action. Usan is my verb, okay? They're using, usar, okay? And what are they using? So what's answering our question, ¿qué o quién? Celulares, okay? Entonces, ¿qué usan? Celulares. That's my objeto directo, celulares, okay? Entonces yo tengo dos de práctica. Manuel estudia el libro de ciencias, comemos galletas. So I want you to pause for a moment. You can even pause the PowerPoint, the video, and figure out who is your subject, what is your verb, and what is the direct object in your sentence. Okay, so, entonces para uno, Manuel estudia el libro de ciencias, okay? Entonces, sujeto, Manuel. Manuel is my subject. He is the one who's doing the action of studying. Estudiar is my verb. El libro de ciencias. That answers my question. What's being studied? The science book. So, el libro de ciencias is my direct object. Dos, comemos galletas. This one's tricky because we don't say any names or anything, but another way we can figure out who's doing the action is by looking at the verb, comemos, from the verb comer, and figuring out the conjugation. Hemos, we know is nosotros, so we are the subject. Nosotros is our subject. Comemos is our verb from comer, so we eat. And what do we eat? Galletas, the cookies. So galletas is my direct object in this case. So that's what we do when we dissect a sentence, and I'm going to ask you guys a lot to dissect sentences for this lecture and also the next one. Okay, so it's going to be pretty important for you to keep these different parts of the sentence straight. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do this first practice, essentially just what we just did. So I want you to identify, you're going to pause it, I want you to identify the subject, the verb, and the direct object for me. So go ahead and pause, go through each of these sentences, and then I'm going to go through each one so you'll hear me start to explain after you unpause the video. Okay, entonces, 1. Los estudiantes escriban los ensayos. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Okay, our subject, los estudiantes. They're the ones who are doing the action of writing. Escribir, escriben is our verb, so they write. And what are they writing? The essays, los ensayos. Okay? María visita a su hermana en el hospital. María, that's my subject. She's the one who's doing the action of visiting, my verb, visitar, her sister, a su hermana, okay? En el hospital. This part, en el hospital, it just tells us where the action is occurring. It's not super important for us to be able to dissect the sentence. Un perro misterioso sigue a los niños. Okay, so our subject is the dog, un perro misterioso, so the mysterious dog. He's our subject. He's doing the action of seguir, to follow. And who is he following? Los niños. Okay? Nina y Enrique compran galletas todos los viernes. So, Nina y Enrique, they're our subject because they are the ones buying, comprar, no, compran. And what are they buying? Galletas todos los viernes. So they're buying cookies. Again, every Friday is sort of like en el hospital, todos los viernes. It just tells us when they're doing the action. So not very important for us to be able to dissect the sentence. 5. Nosotros sabemos el nombre del presidente. Okay. Entonces, sujeto, nosotros. Okay. Verbo, saber, sabemos. So we know. We're the ones who know this information. And what do we know? El nombre del presidente. In this case, actually, this whole part, el nombre del presidente, is our direct object because we know the name of the president, right? We're not saying we know the president, we're just saying we know the name of the president. Y número 6, después de la clase, tú ves a Juan todos los días. Okay, entonces, después de la clase, so after class, this first part really is important to us. Tú ves a Juan todos los días. Tú, you're our subject. You're the one who is seeing, ves, a Juan. Juan is our direct object because you see Juan, okay? So in all of these examples, actually, you can see the order is subject, verb, object, okay? Sometimes you might see something slightly out of order, but these are good, solid examples to show you how it generally looks in Spanish. Okay, los pronombres. Podemos usar pronombres para reemplazar el objeto en una frase, right? So we know that we can use pronouns to replace objects in a phrase. Same way in English, we use a pronoun to replace a person or a thing, right? I might say like, for example, if I'm talking about a book, I could say, oh, I really like Harry Potter. I just read it last week. I can use it to replace Harry Potter because I don't want to repeat Harry Potter. It sounds very repetitive if I'm saying, you know, I really like Harry Potter. I just read Harry Potter last week. Harry Potter is my favorite book. It's a lot, right? We don't need to use that. Same thing with people. I can say, I saw her, I saw him, I saw them, right? To replace that person. Entonces, tenemos me, te, lo, la, nos, os, los, las. So these are our pronouns we're going to be using to replace that object we just talked about, which was like our green highlight in those sentences, okay? So for replacing yourself, you'd use me. For replacing tú, te. Lo, la, that could be a person, él, ella, usted, or it could be used for it, okay? Los, las, same thing. Could be a person or a group of people, or it could be used for them, okay? And that could refer to people or things. Os, we're not going to worry too much about. Nos y nosotros, if you're replacing nosotros, okay? So for us, it's going to be really important to keep in mind our third person. We see we have masculine or feminine and plural or singular. So depending on what object we have, we're going to have to be really careful about who we're replacing and what we're replacing it with. Okay, so like I just said, if we don't want to be repetitive, we can use these pronouns. Okay, so Clara normally watches a movie after school. Clara normally watches it with her friends. Okay, same thing in Spanish. Mi hermano envía muchos mensajes de texto con su celular. Mi hermano los envía a todos sus amigos. So he sends them to all his friends. Carlos cocina la sopa de tomate para todos sus amigos. So Carlos cooks tomato soup for all his friends. I could also say Carlos la cocina cada domingo. So Carlos cooks it every Sunday. As you can see with these last two examples, the direct object pronouns are coming before the conjugated verb, okay? They can also be stuck on the end of an infinitive, so we're going to be seeing an example of that in a moment. But as you can see, my two examples, when I say my brother sends text messages with his cell phone, my brother sends them, los, it's coming before my verb, to all of his friends. Carlos cocina la sopa de tomate para todos sus amigos. So Carlos cooks the tomato soup for all his friends. He cooks it every Sunday. My la, is coming before cocina. Why am I using la and los? Well, los is replacing mensajes de texto. Los mensajes, it's a masculine plural item, so I'm going to need that to use to replace it. Same thing here. La sopa de tomate, it's a feminine singular item, so I'm going to use la as my pronoun for it. So to talk about where we place these pronouns, we can put them, like I said, before conjugated verb, like you saw in those last two examples. La veo, los leo, I see it, I read them, okay? Or we can stick it at the end of an infinitive. Okay, so remember an infinitive is the full verb form that has an ER, AR, or IR at the end. Quiero beberlo, necesito leerlo, I want to drink it, I need to read it. So we might ask ourselves here, well, I have two verbs, right? I have quiero and beber. And I have necesito and leer. So how do I know what I can do? How do I know where to place the lo? Well, if there's two verbs, you can just choose, right? You can either do this option or you can do this option. So you can say lo quiero beber and put that pronoun before the conjugated verb. Or you could just stick it at the end of your infinitive. Quiero beberlo. Oops. Okay, so you have two options there. Same thing with necesito leerlo. I could say lo necesito leer if I wanted to. It would just be like this option. Okay? Práctica dos. Okay, so for this practice, I want you to again pause, and you have a few steps this time. What I want you to do, first thing, is identify the subject, verb, and direct object. If you feel really confident about this and you don't need to do this step, then you can skip that step. However, most of these actually you saw in the last activity, so you've already got the identifications down. There might be a couple new ones. Second step, choose your pronoun to replace the direct object. Think about your grid of pronouns. What's your direct object and how would you replace it? So I'm going to do one with you guys together before I tell you to pause it as well, okay? So we can go through that step together. And 3 is place it correctly. So rewrite your sentence with your pronoun in it, okay? So before a conjugated verb or after an infinitive. Those are your two options for where that pronoun can go. So let's look at number 1 together before I tell you to pause and get started with this, okay? Los estudiantes escriban las cartas. We actually already saw this example in our previous activity. We know that the subject is los estudiantes. Escriben is our verb. Las cartas is our direct object. So we've already dissected the sentence there. Now our pronoun, we want to replace our direct object. We just want to say, instead of saying the students write the letters, we want to say the students write them. Okay, so we want to replace letters with them. So las cartas, I'm thinking about my pronouns and I'm going to use the pronoun las to replace las cartas because it's feminine and plural. Where am I going to put my las? I'm just going to put it before escriben. I don't need to worry about changing the verb at all. So my answer would just be los estudiantes las escriben. Okay? Los estudiantes las escriben. The students write them. Them being the letters. So go ahead and pause and try the rest of them, and then I'm going to go through them together for you. Okay, so let's go over the rest of these. Number 2. Número 2. María visita a su hermana en el hospital. Okay? Tenemos María la visita en el hospital. So, we have here, we already dissected this one earlier. María is our subject. Visita is our verb. Su hermana was our direct object. We know hermana is a feminine singular object. So we're going to replace that with the pronoun la, and we want to put it before our verb. So María visits her. And if you want to add in the hospital, en el hospital, you can. If you just wrote María la visita, that's great too. 3. Un perro misterioso sigue a los niños. We already dissected this sentence, so we probably remember that los niños was our direct object. The dog follows the children. Okay, so los niños, I'm going to replace with the pronoun los to say the dog follows them. Un perro misterioso los sigue. Again, my pronoun needs to come before my conjugated verb. Los sigue. So he follows them. Nina y Enrique compran galletas todos los viernes. Okay, we saw this before and we remember galletas. That was our direct object. How would I replace galletas? With what pronoun? I would use las, okay, because that's a feminine plural object. Nina y Enrique las compran todos los viernes. Okay, so they buy them. Okay, las compran. Nosotros sabemos el nombre del presidente. So we said that the entire thing here, el nombre del presidente, was our direct object in our last example, right? So how would I replace el nombre del presidente? That is a masculine singular thing because I'm talking about the name. So I would use lo. I would just say nosotros lo sabemos. Put my lo before my verb. Después de la clase, tú ves a Juan todos los días. Okay, so we determined that you're the subject, ves is your verb to see, and you see Juan, he's our direct object. How would I replace Juan in this sentence? I would just need to use lo because we're going to assume that Juan is a guy, okay? Entonces, tú lo ves todos los días. Okay, again, if you just wrote tú lo ves, that's perfect, even if you didn't write every day. Okay, we put our lo before our verb. Quiero beber el agua. This one we didn't see before, but we can probably dissect it together. Quiero, so I want. We know I'm the subject. That's my verb. Quiero, so I want to drink. El agua, what do I want to drink? The water. So how am I going to replace el agua with a pronoun? I would replace it with lo. And I can put it in two places, right? I can say quiero beberlo if I stick it at the end of my infinitive, or I can say lo quiero beber and put it before my conjugated verb. La estudiante escribe un correo a mí. So the student writes me an email. So student is my subject. She's doing the action. She's writing an email, okay, to me. So for this one, what we would have is the email is what we're replacing here, right? So she's writing an email to me, okay? So what am I going to replace email with? Lo. Entonces, oops, this is from before. Let's fix this. That was replacing our indirect, so we don't want to do that. We're just going to fix it like this, okay? So we replace it with lo, and we would write la estudiante lo escribe a mí. So she writes it to me, okay, because it's masculine and singular. So hopefully after this activity, you're able to see the form of this, the format of this. This is going to be very, very important for you to move into the next grammar video because we're going to start talking about indirect object pronouns and how to use both these direct object pronouns and indirect together. And that is really what your mind tap gets into, okay? So the next step would be to watch the next video. Maybe I recommend taking a break from this. Let this sink in first before you move on to the next video.